Okay, let's look at the ignition system on this 2007 BMW X3. This is an inline 6-cylinder engine, and for the purposes of identification, this is cylinder 1, 2, 3. This is actually a camshaft timing actuator, or cam phasing actuator. That's a different topic. Cylinder 4, 5, 6. If you use a code reader to download a misfire code and it says misfire on cylinder 2, that's your one. That's your cylinder right there, number 2. They number front to back like that. There are not a whole lot of really easy things to do on a BMW, but one that I don't think I can say that I've ever had an easier job of changing coils. These are your ignition coils here. They sit down on top of the spark plug, and this is a coil on plug style of ignition system. That's basically all modern cars have the coil on plug system. Each spark plug gets its own individual coil. It's a better system because your spark energy is generated at the coil right above the spark plug, so you don't have any voltage drop. The old style system where you had a distributor with posts on it and a little rotor inside that would, rotate around, driven by the camshaft actually, and it would point to this post and it would send a signal to that post. That would take a wire off to the spark plug, and then it would go to this post and fire that spark plug, and then go to that one and fire that spark plug, and continue around continuously while the engine ran. The spark plug wires were all different lengths, and so you'd have voltage drop in the long wires. You'd also have some timing inaccuracy because the rotor itself running around inside the distributor is setting off the chain of events. It's setting off your voltage signals in a timely fashion, but then you have delay as the electricity travels through the conductor. Not a huge delay, but it's enough that it interferes with accuracy and precision timing a little bit. So coil on plug is the new way to do it. You have a bundle of wires coming through here. These are the signal wires. Each coil gets 3 wires, and then there's also this little strap here is a series of ground wires that ground out to the engine block. Here's how you change a coil on a BMW. You lift up on this tab and your little wiring harness fitting comes off. There it is. There's your fitting on the inside, and then this thing has a hole in it for your finger, and you pull up and there's your coil, right? You can't imagine it being easier than that. You can see inside, hopefully, that you've got the 3 pins that connect into the fitting here. Okay, your coil itself is right in here. It's a winding of very fine copper wire that takes a low voltage signal, and as the electricity goes through the coil, it comes out as a high voltage charge. At the bottom of the boot here, this is what connects to your spark plug, and because it's right on the spark plug, you have a very minimum amount of voltage drop on the way from the coil to the spark plug, and every coil is going to fire the spark plug theoretically with the same amount of energy, because there's no differences in travel time for that signal to travel. Story time. For you guys that like ramming your vehicles through snow drifts and busting around on back roads and plowing in and out of snow and stuff like that, good fun. I've done it myself many times. However, snow and water and ignition coils are not a good combo, and my brother-in-law found it out the hard way, and he is by no means a drift buster, but he was driving on a very snowy day, and he was on a 400 series highway, and the plow had gone and left about I'm going to say 2.5 foot high, drift. The plow went past his exit and essentially plowed his exit shut. And I was following him, so I know how this story went. And he chose to drive through it because, hello, here's your exit, you got to go. He had a Hyundai Santa Fe, similar vehicle to this actually, all-wheel drive, slightly elevated stance, so good ground clearance. all-wheel drive, snow tires, the whole bit. Went through the snow, no issues. I followed him. I don't remember what I was driving. It wasn't this. Anyways, got home without issue. The next morning, he went out to start the car, and the car wouldn't run smoothly. It was shuddering and shaking, and pop, up comes an engine light. And it turned out that, because he took it into a garage, it turned out that one of his coils was bad. And in fact, under the coil, down inside here, was water. Well, guess where that came from? So when you go plowing through drifts and you flood the whole engine compartment with snow, not a bad idea to get out an air compressor and a blowgun and flush that all out of there before it gets a chance to melt. And if you park that vehicle outside in the wintertime, I mean, what could go wrong, right? You got a whole bunch of snow in here sitting on top of a hot motor. It's all going to melt. It's going to run in there into who knows where. And then if you're outside in an unheated space, it's also going to freeze. And if you understand what happens to water when it freezes, could that expansion energy possibly crack or break something? Absolutely it could. So just a little note on drift busting there. Okay, I'm going to pull the spark plug because it's way down there. Spark plug sockets, an actual spark plug socket has a rubber boot on the inside, and I hope the camera can pick that up. The purpose of the boot is to actually grab the spark plug so that when you loosen it, you can actually retrieve it. And also you can insert the spark plug into the socket when you reinstall it or when you install a new one. I've already got the correct size loaded up here, and this might seem like an awfully long extension, but the way these new coil unplug designs are and the way new cylinders heads are, this valve cover and cam cover, there's several layers to it, and the spark plug's actually quite a ways down in there. So let's get this guy out. And we'll see if it actually comes along for the ride. Sometimes there's a little bit of friction and it falls out of the socket, but it shouldn't. I haven't had this one out in about 6 months, so I'm kind of curious for myself. Here we go. And there we are. Okay. And what do we got? NGK. And there's your spark plug. Okay. If you noticed that this thing didn't spin super fast right away, and if you notice this little deposit on here, what this actually is anti-seize. I use a copper anti-seize on the threads of the plug, and the reason for that is that the steel of a spark plug thread, any metal will react with aluminum. Sorry, not any metal. Steel will react with aluminum. You basically get a little bit of a corrosion effect in there. It can cause spark plugs to actually seize into the cylinder head. Makes them tough to remove. I've heard of spark plugs breaking off right here, and so you get the top half of it while the rest of it's down in the head, and there's no hexagon left to grab. What in the world are you going to do now, right? The other option that's also, equally bad is if these threads are seized into the aluminum cylinder head and they tear loose, you might get the spark plug out with a nice shiny silver coil spring wrapped all the way around the threads, except it's not a coil spring, it's the threads that tore right out of the cylinder head, and now your cylinder head has no threads, and now you have to do cylinder head removal and a thread repair, which is very expensive. So putting a little bit of anti-seize on here, basically prevents that. Okay, so I've got a little bit of it left on the outside here. You don't want anti-seize on the conductor, of course, because that's going to interfere with firing. But there's where your spark jumps the gap to fire the air-fuel mixture.